Hello everyone, welcome to Procurement 101. My name is Sharath and today I'm in conversation with Akshay Hegde. Akshay is co-founder and MD of ShakeDeal. So Akshay, welcome to the discussion, and today we are here to simplify procurement, what it means and how the term has evolved over the years. As business functions, they have kind of changed dramatically over a period of time. As the shopping has changed, the activity of shopping has changed. So how procurement as a function has changed, what it means. So today we are here to discuss all of that. So if you were to simplify procurement, what would you say?
Sure. Thanks, Sharath, for having me. It's a pleasure to be on this, series and podcast that you guys have been doing. I think it's a great initiative. So, procurement is like it's a term that is obviously something that we completely have our days focused on here at ShakeDeal. But it's fundamentally a very simple, aspect. If you look at what procurement in its literal sense means, procurement is just procuring. Now, procuring what? It's procuring goods or buying goods and services. And these goods and services are usually either intended for use, consumption, or for resale. So that's the primary definition of procurement, right? It's got the aspect of buying involved in it, and mostly it's either buying for a self, that is an individual entity, or for businesses or an organization, that is at an organization level. So procurement by definition is essentially procuring or buying of goods and services, and we are here to simplify. So what ShakeDeal does is it tries to simplify it with the help of technology, right? It has evolved quite a bit over the years with the advent of the internet and mobile internet. So things have become more real time in nature. But to be honest, there's still a lot that can be going on in the procurement space, and I think we will see that in times to come, because a lot of people are already working on some of the new Industry 4.0s, which have not been widely adopted yet, but will soon be. So yeah, I'm kind of drifting away from the procurement 101 aspect, because some of these terms might still be a little new. So why don't you just dive into some specifics that you want to know?
Right. So as more, let's say, retailers or businesses are going from offline to online, so how procurement has changed for people who are making that switch to online?
Yeah, that's a good question. Now, exactly, when you said how procurement has evolved, if I'd like to draw a kind of some sort of parallel between how procurement used to occur back in the day and how procurement is occurring in today's world, you'd see that discovery was a large challenge. Either product discovery or vendor discovery was a large challenge. Initially, there was really no internet. There were no catalogs readily available. There were books that were like in the form of directories, which allowed people to search. So that used to be the basis for their procurement to begin, which happens with the first step, which is sourcing. And today, because of having mobile internet, good penetration of the same, and most people have their own PDAs and devices, smartphones. It enables them to discover really on the go. And since you have new business models that's coming in, be it a catalog or a listing or classifieds, or even direct e-commerce, direct to consumer marketplaces, which enable buying by taking out the middleman. So it has led to a lot of efficiencies coming in to the modern buying or modern procurement process.
Okay, right. So with the advent of internet and advent of emerging technologies and ease of, let's say, digitalization of smaller businesses, how sourcing or procurement, because these two terms are very, very synonymous or interchangeable, is there any difference between sourcing and procurement, or is it okay to use one in place of the other?
It's kind of a gray area. I mean, I wouldn't say that it's wrong to use it one in place of the other, but the way I look at it is procurement is like the entire buying function, right? And it's got like different aspects. It's got sourcing, it's got contracting, it's got onboarding and vendor management along with it. Then it's got the real aspect of procuring or buying, and then it's the delivery and procurement ops side of it, right? So delivery and fulfillment of whatever is it, a service or a set of goods that's being purchased. So sourcing, I believe it's really the first, the first wheel in the...
Or the first step.
Or the first step, yeah. And it has been used widely because it's what triggers everything. If there's a requirement, if there's a requirement for a particular service or good, there is a direct, need for you to source for either suppliers or vendors that are capable of providing those particular services or goods, and that's where the term sourcing comes from.
Right.
And that also involves the step of discovery, which has been completely transformed in this time and age because of all the technology that we have, which earlier used to be completely dependent upon these directories, vendor directories, and people using trunk calls to set up a call with another vendor, and RFPs and RFQs going over postal mail to like known or empaneled vendors, and then that entire process used to be long drawn out. So today, that sourcing is particularly the first part of it, the way I look at it, and procurement as such is the entire, the whole cycle. That's why you call it a procure to pay cycle. Is the entire the buying process, right from once the contracting everything is done, but when you want to place the order and the fulfillment of the order. That's how the procurement. So I wouldn't say it's wrong to use it, but it's like it's got its own nuance associated. Both of them have their own nuances associated with them.
So is it like a level playing field for everyone, let's say businesses who want to sell or businesses who want to buy, or there are still some inefficiencies in the system?
So that's another good question. I think there used to be times when it used to be heavily pitted towards a certain set of suppliers, and because lack of transparency and a few middlemen, and then I don't want to get into those specifics, but lack of transparency brings in a lot of inefficiencies into the system. But going forward, since this period which I just mentioned, there have been a lot of effort in order to make things more streamlined. Procurement as such, streamlined, transparent, efficient, brought online for accountability, visibility as well. So there is now a market for every supplier, and there is a supplier out there for every buyer. I feel like there is I think the supply demand has been well met through the use of such marketplaces and platforms. There may be different, so there's where the power rests, whether it's on the buy side or on the supply side, depends on the sector. It's just how demand and supply and how a sector works, right? If there's too much demand in certain place, suppliers rush to that to fulfill that void, right? If that place is getting too competitive, margins are dropping, then suppliers try to offset that by looking at new avenues. So that being said, right now, because of these marketplaces, platforms and all that, supply is usually well met with demand and vice versa. Than it used to be earlier, where buyers used to inevitably hold a lot of power because of the fact that, firstly, discoverability of buyers was very difficult for suppliers who were like regional in nature, and at the same time the buyers did not just because of the fact that they had more terms to dictate. They enjoyed more of the dynamics of power while negotiating as well. And I think that has been done away with in this recent 10-15 years with the start of a lot of players that have made transactions smoother and more leveled.
Right. So with coming of aggregators and marketplaces, it's easy for buyers to find the right suppliers. So do you think there's still a gap or a void with respect to transparency in pricing? Is there someone who can manipulate these models?
So yeah, that's another good question. Manipulating of pricing is not easy, especially when it's a completely open marketplace, which is not rigged. It's transparent. If you're using even any of the auctioning engines, it leads to a real discovery of pricing. So I don't believe that aggregators and marketplaces, having worked so hard, have not been able to solve that. We have, to a certain extent, really solved the fact that the pricing is no more, I guess, unexpectedly, what is that? Padded or bloated, and it's really the true equilibrium price. But there could be, a lot of factors that can provide a lot more trust to buyers looking for, the true market price that is not, or altered or unadulterated, which can be brought in with the use of blockchain-based reverse auctions and stuff like that. And that would provide a lot more trust into the ecosystem.
Right. So what do you think, what are the ways companies can optimize their procurement spend? Can they get into annual rate contracts and make sure that pricing doesn't change dramatically? At least they can lock in prices for a certain period. Do you think that is the right way to optimize this spend? One of the ways.
Yeah, I think that actually depends on how long a company looks at its sourcing cycles. If the sourcing cycle is pretty long, I would probably do it once and stick with it for a long period of time.
Right.
Unless there are problems coming up. But if the sourcing cycle isn't that long, then I think companies can afford to, have it for short periods of time. I would say even if short period, the least one should have a contract signed for is at least 6 months. That's two quarters.
2 quarters, right? Does it depend on the category of, let's say, goods or services? For example, office supplies. It makes sense to go for maybe a 2-year contract or a 3-year contract.
Sure. I mean, yeah, definitely, because there are certain things that are not so. The pricing doesn't vary and the supply doesn't get the ability to supply those products is not does not come under supply pressures for long periods of time unless there's some sort of supply chain disruption, and those kind of verticals can be contracted for long periods of time.
Right.
Price fluctuation is primarily one of the first reasons people come back to the table to renegotiate. But things that don't change or are pretty much stable in terms of pricing within a certain bandwidth can be contracted out together for longer periods of time, like a year or 2 years, 3 years. And people do that with some of the things like you mentioned, office supplies, because office supplies is so indirect in nature, right? And yeah, ShakeDeal here, we specialize in the indirect aspect of procurement. And that's another thing I'd like to touch upon, just because we're terming this as procurement 101. Procurement has two aspects. It's indirect and then there's direct.
Right.
Direct is everything that goes into the
Making of the product.
Making of the product, the cost of the goods, right? Cost of goods sold. Direct procurement would be that, at least. So if I buy this product, if I were to buy it or procure, I were to procure to resell it, and I buy this for 10 rupees, and I sell this for 15 bucks. So 10 would be my cost of goods, and this would be direct procurement.
Right.
For that. But then there's procurement for use and for facilities, upkeep, and so on and so forth, right? Which is basically part of the indirect spend that organizations have. And that usually or typically, as a thumbnail, you could say that between 15 to 20% of companies' top lines are usually spent that way for indirect nature of goods or services. And though both are extremely important in helping industries become more competitive, add efficiencies, and add to their bottom lines. The maximum I guess pain points and trouble areas are found in this indirect aspect because it's so wide, and there's no. It's like yes, even if you had resources that you had to like put into this space, you'd have to basically spread them too thin across a wide number of areas, like be it MRO or office supplies or warehousing supplies, packaging. So all these things would basically be a big challenge, and hence there's a lot of scope for solutions in the indirect space, and that's what ShakeDeal is basically primarily into. But direct, again, as you said, is a cost of goods that's associated with the direct spend, and that has the ability to affect bottom lines on a whole different level, which means it's like directly affecting your gross margin, line item on your P&L.
Right. So as traditional procurement has evolved, it has led to procurement as a service. So how do you think this is going to pan out, procurement as a service? Or what do you see the potential of this service or this solution?
See, I think especially because we're having this conversation in the midst of us getting back in this out of this COVID lockdown period, right? Procurement as a service will kind of take wings right now, because there's a need to concentrate on your, I guess, core functionality, and I guess let the experts handle the non-core aspects of a business. Also because people are looking to be leaner, conserving and being more sustainable,
more frugal. Frugality has all been built into this time, because you've seen a lot of companies that have not had I guess sizable cash reserves that have been found wanting in a time like this. Right.
So I guess one of the disruption arbitrage is something that we'd like to contain. Companies would start trying to contain that, and for that they would like to have a plug and play kind of solution, which does not really affect them. They can ramp up, ramp down as much as possible, and at the same time have the access to the best in class, right?
Right.
And the experts.
Right.
So I believe going ahead, procurement as a service, which includes all the entire sourcing life cycle to procure to pay, and procurement ops, which is fulfillment of all the orders. Outsourcing of that will become one of the key strategies that I think a lot of the procurement leaders in the country will try and adopt, and this would probably bring in a lot more efficiencies and reduce. I guess it reduces a lot of overheads and trouble areas and pain points for industries as a whole, and supply chain becomes more than this is already in my warehouse. How do I push it out now? Right. So it then becomes a lot of more. It becomes more focused on distribution and logistics, and procurement is taken care of by someone else.
Right. Okay. So are there any specific categories where you see procurement as a service gaining more momentum? Any specific product category in the current, let's say, short term?
Yeah, I'm very bullish about MRO, the MRO space, which is again maintenance, repair, and operations, or overhaul, however you call it. Reason being, MRO is itself an umbrella term for almost the way we put it, or the way we have it cataloged, I think 35 to 40 plus categories, right? And these are like so small, they're like a long tail of line items. If you would have to like run a ABC analysis on this, you would find like, you know the 80-20 rule, right? So you'll see that this is probably what forms the 20% consumption. But it's got like most of the line items spread across these different categories. And it's the trouble areas, because there's not enough being bought to drive down the price, nor is there significantly enough supply from a particular supplier for him to be able to take advantage of the economies of scale.
Right. So
it's fragmented in that way, and that's where the biggest I guess opportunity for making things more efficient is.
Right. So would you say MRO space is more fragmented? That's why there's a need for procurement as a service, so that you can reduce friction?
Yes, absolutely. And it's good that you use the word friction, because that's exactly what it is. Everyone wants to have real time, or a way. They want everything done instantaneously nowadays, right? Even buying for businesses, everything. The friction increases when you have a lot of small points to haggle over and stuff like that, right? When you are able to smoothen it, streamline it,
right,
make it more efficient, the friction goes away. So we're trying to achieve that, and I think the biggest opportunity for that is in the MRO space right now.
Right.
Because again, I feel that is the most where it is fragmented.
Right. So with this, I'll be wrapping up today's session, and it was great talking to you. And in the coming sessions, we'll be exploring more about more aspects of procurement as service and different business functions of procurement and supply chain. Thank you, Akshay, for your time.
Thanks, Shad. Cheers. This was a good one. I really liked this.
Thank you.
Thank you.